What are you doing there, knucklehead?
Just cooking breakfast.
It's LA Fishguys and the LED lighting retrofit.
Welcome back. As you can see, lights are in, they're all done. It's been actually pretty productive. Saved a lot on power. Power consumption went down right now by about 70%. Before metal halides, they were drawing about right in the neighborhood of about 6.7 amps. The way I have these dialed in right now, I've got about 2.5 amps worth of draw. So
tell us again, what kind of LED lighting system do you have here?
Well, these are Reef Tech LEDs. Essentially, we have 4 fixtures. The 2 on the very ends down there are 180 watts a piece on that one, and then they want it on this end down here. The 2 middle ones, they're 90 watts a piece. We have one master light, which is basically the light that I program. It connects to all the other lights, and they effectively are slaves. So these 2 act as one slave, and this one down here acts as the 3rd or 2nd slave, rather. And when you program it, I have a nice sunrise and sunset that works its way across the tank. Each fixture has multiple boards, and on each LED board there's 3 different colors. There's white, blue, and royal blue. Now what happens is, as you have a sunrise, the light travels, or the light dims on from right to left, or in this case, from east to west. And at sunset, it does the same thing. So each fixture has a gradual light that moves across it and brightens one color at a time to create a sunrise and sunset effect. And with the way they are now, I get that sunrise to sunset effect that works its way across the tank.
So not only does each individual unit have a lighting pattern that works from one end to the other end, but all 4 units linked together also increase from one end of the tank to the other end of the tank.
Correct. It is essentially, when you network them together, or when they link together, they effectively operate as one large light with multiple stages or multiple boards, and each board has 3 colors. The beauty of it is I can program in the intensity of each individual color. So in this case, I was able to dial in a good starting point for my brightness to acclimate the corals to the lights, but I was also able to dial in the color by adjusting the intensity of my whites, my blues, and my royal blues. So I was able to get a nice bright color, maybe comparable to about a 20K metal halide, just simply by going in on the computer and tweaking colors.
So there are 3 different color LED lights inside these units?
That's correct. We have the white, we have a blue, and a royal blue. The royal blue, you know, is a real kind of a purplish blue. The other blue, the regular blue, is more of a blue that you might use for moonlight. And then, of course, the white, which is probably comparable to like a 10K metal, well, maybe like a 7K metal halide. You kind of get a little bit more of a yellow light. But when you add in the blues, it really changes the lighting effect on the aquarium, and you can adjust it to make different colored corals pop. And we'll kind of get to that. I'll show you briefly how that works. But I'm really happy. The egg, not so. It's actually cool as can be in here compared to metal halide.
So there's no real increase in temperature then?
No, substantial decrease actually, but I do have very good ventilation in here. I have a large 10-inch fan that's ducted outside, so in the case of the metal halides, it did keep it very cool in here. With the LEDs, it's even cooler now. But effectively, you know, with LEDs, you can really avoid heating your tank's water, as metal halides will have a major impact typically on the water temperature of a tank. In my case, not so much because of the ventilation in here, but overall LEDs do run a lot cooler, and it can save you electricity not only on the power that they draw, but if you have a chiller like I do, it can certainly impact the amount of time that the chiller runs.
Well, I'd like to get into the technical or efficiency side of it, and we'll do that here in just a minute. Before we go there, tell us really, what do you have set up inside here as far as LED lights for white and blue, and you've got moonlight in here attached to the light rack?
Yeah, the moonlight, the lights themselves actually have a built-in moonlight cycle. I have another moonlight solution that I've been using now for some time that's connected to my Apex computer or my Aquarium controller. So I decided to use those because the moonlight that's part of my Aquarium controller actually follows the natural moon cycle, both in brightness as well as timing. So when we have a partial moon outside, the moonlights are partially dimmed. When you have a full moon outside, the moonlights are on full. And you know, some people, I mean, obviously it's nice to have a little bit of blue light on the tank at night so you can see things, but I think, you know, that it's probably better to follow the natural moon cycle because it does have gravitational effects. And, you know, in the ocean it controls, I think, tides, it can control spawning activities and stuff like that. So in my opinion, if you can have your moonlight mimic the natural moon cycle, it's got to be better than having them run all the time. Plus, it's a little bit of a treat when there's a full moon out.
That's very cool.
So,
When in Los Angeles, make it a point to stop in Long Beach, California at Age of Aquariums, 2642 Cherry Avenue, just off the 405 freeway near Signal Hill. At Age of Aquariums, their knowledgeable staff showcases designer aquariums featuring colorful corals and exotic fish, a spectacular 4-sided 500-gallon living coral reef, along with a wide selection of coral frags and a large selection of saltwater fish, the cute, the graceful, and the not-so-cute. Age of Aquariums also carries a selection of popular freshwater fish for the beginning hobbyist. Along with a full line of aquarium supplies and supplements, Age of Aquariums quarantines and medicates all their new fish and proudly provides LA and Orange County's largest aquarium maintenance service. Age of Aquarium is located at 2642 Cherry Avenue, just off the 405 freeway near Signal Hill. Open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday and 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Saturdays and Sundays. For more information, dial 562-438-6252 or visit ageofaquariums.biz.
Hey there, my name's Jim Stime. I'm the LA Fish Guy. Are you interested in learning more about marine aquariums? Are you interested in hanging out with a bunch of other people who are interested in learning more about marine aquariums? Well, this coming September 9th, 10th, and 11th, the Greater Iowa Reef Society is hosting MACNA 2011. That's the Marine Aquarium Conference of North America, and it'll take place in Des Moines, Iowa. They've asked me, the LA Fish Guy, to come give a presentation, so make it a note that that presentation will be at 10 o'clock that Friday morning, so schedule yourself appropriately. And here's how to gather more information.
Do you remember our friend Condi? He's the LA service guy that has that rose garden anemone tank. Well, join us for episode 100. He's got a 1,000-gallon reef tank he's gonna be building.
Take 3, okay. Once again, take 10. Take 11, once again. Okay. Our second priority, take 15, okay. That is correct, or if not, we will have water all over the floor.
Great.
all right, so let's talk a little bit about the mechanics and the electronics up here. We've got several cables. They're all attached to pulleys. The middle ones were kind of a last minute thought. I needed a little bit more structure in here because of the weight of the center fixtures. So they went in after the fact, but cables are attached to a winch in the closet, allows me to raise and lower my light rack with the push of a button. We've got a pretty fair amount of wiring and stuff to make this all work, so we'll get into that briefly. Each fixture has its own power source. So we've got a basically a power adapter, an AC adapter of sorts for each light that is strategically placed around the rack. Cables are all kind of neatly run. I do need to put some covering over it, but Jim got here sooner than I thought. Let's cover some of the power on here. This particular power bar is attached to my aquarium controller, and it allows me to actually monitor power usage. Also allows me to turn on different outlets that might be attached to different things. So we also have our moonlight controllers here. These actually attach to the LEDs down there, the moonlight LEDs, which are these little tiny black boxes. They all have little blue LEDs in them, and they simulate the moonlight, allow me to dim or automatically dim the moonlights based on the moon cycle. So when it's full moon, I've got them real bright. When it's half moon or low moon, they're not as bright, and it follows the actual moon pattern. Up here we got a hodgepodge of different stuff. So we've got power supply for this fixture. We've got our network cables. This is actually where the lights all attach together, or daisy chain as we talked about earlier. They use these little network plugs. I made a little box that essentially functions as a patch bay.
And if you look close, you'll find the power, the Ethernet, and the serial port connections here inside of the units.
So now that we've covered a little bit about how it all plugs together, how the light rack goes together, and how it works, we're going to talk a little bit about how I derive that we're using a lot less power. So let's talk a little bit about power usage between metal halides and LEDs. We have a graph here that's from my aquarium controller. The blue line is the power bar that was associated with the metal halides. The red line is the power bar that's now associated with the LEDs that we just installed.
So there's a pretty big difference in amp draw there.
Yeah, you can see that there's about 2 amps without the metal halides on there, and when the metal halides were on, it was drawing about 8.2 amps.
So those two 400 watt metal halides were, you said 8 point what amps?
8.2.
Wow.
So we have a little over 6 amps worth of power usage for the metal halides alone. Actually, I calculated 6.7 because the metal halides were peaking at about 8.
And now the LEDs are?
The LEDs peak at about 2.5 amps. When I first got them at default settings, they were drawing a little over 3 amps, but after dialing them in for acclimation and preferred color, I ended up using right around 2.5 amps.
So 2.5 amp draw now versus 8 amps previously.
Well, 6.7 plus 2 or so amps for my pumps.
Aha. That's a pretty significant savings. I'd say that's 60%.
Yeah, going from over 6 amps down to 2.5 amps is well over 60%.
Certainly one valid reason for switching over to LEDs.
Yeah, that heat saving power on the refrigeration as well. That also makes a pretty big difference as well.
Sure. Now you were going to show us something about tweaking the colors of the lights?
Yeah, I have they have software that actually remotely connects to the lights through Bluetooth, where I can adjust the intensity of my white, blue, and my royal blue. You can also set your sunset times and sunrise times, your duration of sunrise and sunset. In this case, my sunset and sunrise occur over about an hour and 15 minutes or so. So I get a gradual dimming effect or brightening effect over the course of about an hour and 15 minutes, where it works its way from east to west across the tank.
So I guess what we're most interested at this point is not just the energy efficiency savings, but how does the tank look?
Yep, let's talk about that, Jim. Right now, I have things set to what I find is acceptable light, what I like to see. And I also adjusted my intensity based on PAR levels. Now, I have a little meter here, has a little probe that actually goes in the water, and you set it in the water and you turn it on, and it'll measure the amount of light from the fixtures at various levels in the tank, and I use that to basically make sure that I didn't cook my corals. A lot of different LEDs out there. Some you can dim, some you can't, and the ones that you can't dim, typically you'd acclimate by having them real high up. In my case, I can adjust my intensity so it's not too bright. So without getting into details on PAR levels, because that's a can of worms, let's talk about what the lights do at different levels, and I'm going to show you that real quickly. Just for effect here, what I'm going to do is give you only whites and no blues. Abracadabra. what you'll be looking at now is just white light. So you can see it kind of goes to yellow. Now what we'll do is give you just blue light. So that's the straight blue. Now we'll show you what the royal blue looks like by itself. That's a royal blue. We'll give you all the lights at full power. So that's 100% power on all three colors. And take some blue out. We'll go to 100% white and 50% royal blue and 50% blue. And I'll just take out the blue and leave you with some royal blue, and it'll give a real interesting effect as well. Kind of purples things up. So, in a nutshell, you've basically got an infinite amount of control over the lighting, colors, intensity. Okay, so a lot of you guys are probably scratching your heads as to why LED. Obviously, you have a lot more control than you would over metal halide. LEDs technically last indefinitely. They're rated at like 500,000 power hours. Clearly, I have an infinite amount of control over my lighting, intensity, and other stuff that you wouldn't get out of a metal halide. Metal halide should be replaced every 6 or so months, so that's a factor that, you know, does end up running a fairly decent expense a year, in excess of $400 a year in my case. So,
just the replacement bulb cost.
Yes, for me, power consumption was really at the heart of it, and that's been a lot of my drive over the last years. I've made changes to the tank was to reduce my power. Before the LEDs, I cut my power in half just with that sump changeover and the new pumps. And what does that spell? Well, yes, of course my bill drops, but in my case it drops exponentially because I use so much power that the local power company charges me surcharges. So I, between lights and other stuff, will see about a 75% decrease in my power costs. A year, that's thousands and thousands of dollars, several $1,000s actually. So you look at the cost of the lights, it pays for itself in the first few months, literally. Plus, I have the ability to sell the old equipment, which now is already gone. So, in closing, for me, it was absolutely the right choice. If I was building a new system, would I go LED? Absolutely would. Would I recommend LEDs? Yes. I went with one particular brand, but there's a lot of options out there. Just keep in mind that a lot of those options don't give you the ability to dim and change different colors. And for me, I think that was a very important factor when I considered these. It's real easy to burn corals, and being able to acclimate and get your colors to a preferred choice is, in my book, very, very important. So if you're thinking about LEDs, I suggest you do your homework.
And there is one bit of homework that you will want to do, and that is an accurate comparison, because LED lighting in comparison to metal halide or fluorescent lighting is not an apples-to-apples scale. Whereas those older style aquarium lighting systems were based on wattage, new LED lighting is so much more effective or efficient that its wattage rating or usage is considerably lower. This comparison will have an effect on any new lighting system that you purchase, but more so will have a much greater effect on those that are existing systems or being upgraded or retrofitted systems. Because as you go from one intensity of lighting or one spectrum of lighting to another spectrum without an appropriate acclimation period or even a reference as to what range you should be acclimating to, those corals are subject to potentially becoming sunburnt. Sunburnt in the sense that they will overdrive their production of zooxanthellae algae and cause internal problems with the coral, or very possibly disturb the coral enough that it actually expels its zooxanthellae in what we call coral bleaching. And so as a final recap, we've already shown that the efficiency decreases the energy consumption, making it much more cost-effective to utilize LED-style lighting. But we have not determined what is the comparison, what is the scale, what is the ruler that one uses to determine how much intensity or wattage of LED lighting to put on top of a tank. That's something that we'll need to save for another episode down the road, or in between now and then, you'll need to do your homework and research to come up with that answer. But as with all of your aquarium challenges, always keep moving forward.